Welcome to Guitars and Music. I'm going to do a little review of a guitar I picked up just yesterday, the Gibson Les Paul Special for $1,600. I haven't played a Gibson in a long time, so it was kind of a interesting thing for me to buy a Gibson. And the Les Paul Special is kind of an interesting one. You see a lot of them around, and there seem to be a lot of questions about them, so I'm going to give you my take. I'm also going to compare it a little bit with my Fender as a longtime Fender player and a Fender fan, and remains so. But I do have some kind of Gibson as opposed to Fender, not versus Fender, because they're both great. But I do have some Gibson and Fender comments towards the end of this video. Hope you'll watch. Picked this up yesterday. Actually, my wife called me. She teaches at a little music store, and told me this guy had got this in used. It's a Les Paul Special. Now, I was a little confused by all the different Les Paul Specials, including this one looks a lot like a Les Paul Tribute, but this is the Les Paul Special. To interject a little bit, I think a lot of these guitars are actually versions of the Les Paul Jr., which is, of course, one of the classic vintage Les Pauls, but they've had a number of different types of Les Paul Juniors over the years, and I think the Les Paul Special, I'm calling it that, is actually a version of the Les Paul Junior. They go new for around $1,600. I got it for $9. I consider that a pretty good deal. I told my wife, you know, unless you sell it at a pawn shop or Guitar Center, and they mark them down, and that's understandable actually, but you know, it'll always be worth $900, and in a few years, probably a good bit more. But I'm going to do a little review of this, and I also wanted to compare it a little bit to my Fenders. I'm a Fender guy now, and I've never had too many Gibsons, so I wanted to compare. But I've played Fenders for a lot of years, and I love my Fenders. So I wanted to compare a little bit the Fender and the Gibson thing, as well as review this guitar. Okay, this is the guitar. Like I said, I just picked it up yesterday for $900. And anything I say about it, I would like to just remind you, is tempered by the fact that I've been playing my Highway 1 every day for a year, and Fenders for really a couple decades. And so I'm not that used to the Gibson. It does play a little different. I'd say it has a different touch, which is good. It kind of challenges you. It's a real smooth playing. I'm kind of a picker, and there it is. You see, comes in a nice case. And like I said, this is the Les Paul Special, which is about $1,600. And there's a Les Paul Tribute that looks a lot like this. And I thought maybe I had bought the Tribute. And I was for $900 used, and they sell $900 new. But this is the Les Paul Special. There we go. One of the big differences that I noticed between the Tribute and the Special is you do get that neck binding, which is nice. The neck's pretty fat. Again, it takes a little different touch. And another thing that I think is nice is it's got a nitro finish. Apparently, from what I understand, if it says Gibson, it's nitro, and that's a nice nitro finish. I think the serial numbers on this indicate that it's a 2020 guitar, if I'm not mistaken. But that nitro will age, as everybody knows. And I've kind of decided at this stage in my life, I have some poly guitars that are excellent. I've got some American Professionals, but I think in terms of having guitars that I'm going to give to my grandkids or something, I think the nitro are going to age better. I think the poly guitars, I don't think they necessarily are worse. They play just as good, maybe, but um, these nitro guitars, I think, are going to be better. And I don't just mean in a financial sense, but you know where the rubber meets the road when it comes to intonation, I've always thought is to play an open G chord and then an open E chord. I know that's true on acoustics, and I think it's true on electric. There's something about the way the guitars tune up, and I don't think you can really ever use perfect tuning, right? You have to kind of temper it, but you play G chord, and then a lot of cheaper guitars you can get a G chord in tune, and then you play an E chord and it's out. Or vice versa, you can play an E chord and get that in tune, play in that key, and then you go to G and it's out. But a really good guitar with good intonation can play a G chord and an E chord, and you don't have to retune all the time. And that's how you know you got yourself a good guitar. This one seemed to do it. It's a little fussy, but I think it did it. You know these are good. It's got a wraparound bridge, P90 pickups. Still got the plastic on there. I thought maybe that was scuffing, but that's obviously the plastic. I'll have to take that off. It's got a really nice switch. It's high quality. Still came with the case candy. Let's see here. So we got a strap that says Gibson owner's manual, Gibson warranty. I don't know if that applies to me. And it's got this. I don't know. Is that another strap? That might be the previous owner. It's got a picture of it. I don't know if that's maybe from I don't know if that's from the music store. It's got some tools. Who knows what those are? I would never try to use those tools, but it's got some of the quality control checklist stuff there. So, you know one thing. You know, one thing I will say, I think Gibson, of course, they've got such a big name, but like anybody with a big name, it's easy to just start relying on the name. And I think everybody would say Gibson went through a period where their quality wasn't all that good. Kind of like they say that about Fender and Gibson in the 70s. Even Martin, they say that a bit about in the 70s. But Fender's been making such good guitars, really, I would argue, ever since they the CBS sold them. You know, the technology's changed, but whatever technology's been, so the guitars since like 2000 have, I think, been better because of introduction of new technology, but all the really Fender's always made good guitars since the 80s. But I do think Gibson, from what I understand, I haven't played that many, went through a period where the quality wasn't that good. And I think this new owner, what's his name, Mark Agnesi or whatever, is really trying to do some good things with the company, get the quality control. You know, that's priority number one. And also maybe make some guitars that never sacrifice quality, but aren't all like, you know, blues lawyers, $5,000, $6,000 guitars, you know. And this is a Les Paul, so I consider this a nice guitar. That's the only thing. You know, I was going to say I've never played many Gibsons, but then I was thinking actually when I was 18 and 19, my main guitar for a year was a Gibson SG, and I played in a little band. We were called Vesuvius. It was a little bit shades of Wayne's World or Bill and Ted, but we were actually pretty good. Could have made a few changes, been a little better maybe, but anyway, I had a Gibson SG, and I used to love it for rock and roll. But you know, one thing that never tuned up that great, and then I bought another Gibson a few years after that at the same place, a little place in Pontiac, Michigan called Reliable Music, and this was a little pawn shop. This made Pawn Stars, you know, with Chumley and the Old Man. This place made Pawn Stars look like Saks Fifth Avenue. I mean, it was just like crates of old stuff all over. The guy that ran it was this old man that had been in the pawn business for years, and he sold me this Gibson SG. And this was guy, it was like he had a baggy suit, and he smoked a big cigar, and said stuff like, "Hey kid," you know. I mean, it was just right out of pawn shop dealer Central Casting. And he sold me a Gibson, and I took it home it was a charcoal gray Gibson SG. Have you ever heard of a charcoal gray Gibson SG? Well, I was kind of excited. It said Gibson up there, and I played it for about a week. And after a little while, I was playing it, and I noticed this little decal. There was a little decal up there that said Gibson. And as I played it for a week or two, that decal came off, and I realized I'd been ripped off. It wasn't a Gibson. I've always kind of remembered that. But, you know, I never thought Gibson stayed in tune all that well. Now, when I was a kid, those two Gibsons I did own, and I think I played a Les Paul Jr. for a while. Now, I always liked the Les Paul Jr. That's why I was kind of amenable to this. I always thought that was better for the SG. Now, the SG was a great guitar for, I mean, I would consider that a great, like, AC/DC, Who Live at Leeds, probably a lot of the Cream stuff, Black Sabbath, you know, I consider those like SG type bands. Hendrix, you know, played an SG sometimes. But I always thought, especially as I got a little older and I learned a little bit more about other guitars, I always had a little trouble tuning them, I thought, and they were always kind of fussy. And as I thought they were always good for leads. Man, you could, I don't know if I've ever had I mean, those things were great for leads. They sounded great, that you had that big neck. But as I got older, I wanted to always play different styles, and I had played on an acoustic guitar growing up, so I'm kind of a picker. I like to pick sometimes, you know, and that's why I eventually went to the Telecaster, because the intonation and the picking on the Telecaster is so good. I would still say, even though I love my Strat, the Telecaster for overall intonation is the best guitar I've ever come across, just as a rule, and mine are in that category. They're great. They sound great. They're rock and roll, but you can do other things on them, and they tune up so well. So, I don't know. You can read different things about the intonation on Gibsons. One thing I noticed about this is I did think the G string was a little fussy on me. That's the only thing I'll say about it, is the G string's a little fussy. I think I'm going to try to get it set up. I don't want to change it too much, because sometimes, you know, you have to play it a while. If I play it a lot, I might decide that, you know, I like the way, but the action is a little low, and I do think the G string's a little fussy, fussier than any Fender I have. And I don't know if that's attributed. People always attribute it to the way that those strings split off. But my Martin does that. A lot of acoustic guitars do that. Might be the little shorter neck, I don't know. But the G string is a little fussy. And I don't like that because when I like to play rhythm, I don't want to have to sit there and tune all the time. That Highway 1 I have, which the Highway 1 I have doesn't have the best intonation of any guitar I own, but that said, I've gotten so I don't pay much attention to the tuning because it's always in pretty good tune. Sometimes I'll be playing stuff back and I'll realize I should have tuned it up a little bit, but for the most part, it's always in pretty good tune right out of the case. And this one, I was tuning on a regular, I was always fussing with it. And it was mostly that G string. I don't know what it is about G strings in Gibson. But it might be a setup issue, and I don't think it's really, any big deal, really, if you like the Gibson. Like I said, I noticed the sustain sound on it was great. So that's what you're getting with the Gibson. No guitar, I don't think any guitar does everything, and I think it was beyond me. Now that said, it sounds great. The action is a little bit it doesn't buzz out, but almost. And I thought maybe I bought it used. I don't think the guy had played it much, but it either had a setup done by the previous owner, or it came from the factory with what I would regard as the action's a little bit low. Right here I notice it. I can get it like this. But boy, I've really got to be careful compared to my Highway 1. But that said, it's a nice guitar, and what it does have is that Les Paul sing, that sweet sustain. And I noticed that. I don't know if it's the pickups. I think the shorter neck might have something to do with that too. But I think what a Les Paul always is going to give you that maybe you can't get anywhere else is that really sweet singing sustain that you get on a Les Paul. And this one's got it. So this is a good Les Paul. If you like what Les Pauls do and you like a Les Paul, this is a good Les Paul for $1,500 new, and I think you can get them around $900 used. And one thing, I'm pretty sure this is gonna be worth some money someday. I don't buy guitars for investments, but I have got to a point where I think, well, if I've got a couple extra guitars, if I know that down the road they'll always kind of be worth at least what I paid for them. If I don't sell them at a hawk them or something like that, that kind of helps me feel a little better about buying them. And I do feel that about this guitar. I think it's a good guitar. It's got that nice Les Paul sound. I'm not, I noticed when I played, I felt kind of a little bit handicapped when I was playing because the action's pretty different in the touch and everything. But highly recommend. Well, I just wanted to share that. I think it's a nice guitar. Like I said, I Fender versus Gibson. I'm a Fender guy. I think I always will be. And, playing this Les Paul is great. And there's this, I've always said, really you can play anything on anything in a way, electric guitar. Like people, oh, you could never play that song on a Strat. Oh my God, I need a fainting couch. Or, oh, you've got to have a Les Paul to play that. Or, but, if you have good gear, you can usually play anything on anything, electric guitar wise. But Gibson Les Paul and Fender Strat or Tele are different. And I've always been more of a Fender guy, and I think I'll probably stay a Fender guy. But this is a nice guitar, and I'm glad I have it. I'm glad I own it. I think it's a quality addition to my collection. And if you like Gibson and Les Paul, and you didn't want to spend $5,000 on it, I definitely recommend this Les Paul Special. You might want to watch out. There's a Tribute. I'm sure that's nice too, actually. But I think the Les Paul Special that sells new for about $1,600. If you don't mind bumping up that several $100s, you get the neck binding, and I think the finish might be a little better on it too. They're all nitro, but somebody said the finish on the Les Paul Special is a little nicer. But highly recommend. Maybe I'll do a shootout between the Gibson and the Highway 1 sometime. The only problem is I play that Highway 1 so much, and I'm not. This Gibson has a pretty different touch. I don't really think it would show the Gibson in the best light because it plays pretty different, and I'm not that used to it. And I think I'll probably play my Highway 1 is going to stay my main guitar. But definitely nice guitar. Definitely worth having. Thanks. God bless.